I think in my long career in IT, and you can tell because of the grey hair that I've been around the block a little bit. There was once an event that I did with IBM many, many years ago where we were actually in one hall and there was a competing event in another hall. And so we were talking about IT and they were talking about water management. And unfortunately, some of the people from the water management group got into the IT part, so I was trying to explain something to them. They didn't have a clue what I was talking about. So hopefully you're in the right place, okay? And you get to learn a little bit about SingleStore. So thank you very much. So let me just do a little bit of an introduction on myself. Broad industry experience. So I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt kind of thing. Now they've given me this wonderful white shirt as well, which is added to my collection. I've worked with lots of technologies over the years, principally database systems because that's my background, but also with programming languages, IDEs as well over the years. And I've had some client-facing roles as well. So I've done consulting work, I've done technical marketing, I've been technical writer, technical trainer. So I've worked with a broad range of parties over the years. And one of the things that I think that gives you is a wonderful kind of perspective on life, and wonderful perspective in terms of the kind of pain points that people go through in terms of how they use technology and what are the sorts of things that they're looking to solve in terms of business problems. Publications and presentations as well over the years. I've been very fortunate in terms of doing that. Here are some of them. Please don't buy any of these. Technology is obsolete, okay? So the purpose of showing you this is that over time, new stuff comes along. Sometimes it replaces what's already there, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's a kind of an add-on, and gradually over time we tend to kind of absorb it, becomes part of the daily sort of routine, if you like. So years ago, when I was a kind of a researcher, you know, the hot technology of the day, the thing that was going to replace relational, kill off Oracle, kill off Microsoft and IBM, was object-oriented databases, all right? So that was the going back to the late 1980s, early 1990s. Of course, it never happened, right? But the thing is, the relational vendors were very savvy. They kind of realized, okay, you know, it's a little bit of a threat. Let's take on some of those capabilities and features and add them into our product. And that's exactly what they did. 10 years later, lather, rinse, repeat. Same thing, okay? So then it was XML data management. XML was the hot thing of the day. It was going to take over the world. It was the end of Oracle, end of IBM, end of Microsoft. It never happened. Again, vendors adapted, okay? So that was the requirement of the day. And so you saw the standards around XML support, for example, XQuery and those kind of things, be able to query this data residing within relational systems, and that was pretty good. Subsequently, you can see that after that I kind of gave up, principally because publishing is hard. Lose hair, right? It takes time. From the time that you get an idea for a book to the time it actually hits the bookshelves takes about 2 years. Today, that's too long. You know, 6 months is too long. 3 months is too long. You know, 2 months is too long. The world changes very, very rapidly, and new innovations come along all the time. I mean, just look outside, for example. You got vendors selling you pretty much anything and everything. Okay, I mean that's the nature of technology. The pace of change is very fast. Okay, and simply for now, in terms of what we have, is this requirement of data-intensive applications. I'm sure lots of you have got one of these things, okay? Your entire digital lives kind of sit on this, okay? You do your internet banking, your Facebook, your Twitter, everything else associated with that. That's okay. I mean, that's innovation. Okay, let's just drill down a little bit further and take a look at some of the kind of needs and requirements for this. Well, data volume, usage, complexity increasing all the time. It's a fact of life, okay? Nothing we can do anything about. You just have to deal with these requirements. Best customer experiences, real-time analytics, okay? So it's important to be able to get insights into what customers really need. It's a very competitive landscape. The world has changed, okay? It's deregulation in many industries, so it's a need to be able to offer better products and services than your competitors, be able to get insights, look at threats, look at opportunities much, much faster, and that's kind of hard to do, okay? Because the volume of the data that we have to deal with increases exponentially. Data-hungry application services which continue to rapidly expand. It's, again, part and parcel of the world that we live in today. Okay, so in terms of what we need to do then, well, we notice sluggish event to insight response, SLAs, service level agreements, very, very difficult to meet these, okay, because of these challenging requirements that we have. Databases are maxed out, driving rising cost and complexity. Lots of different products that we have on the market today. Many of them are not suitable for the kind of problems that we have for today, and many others, in terms of how we use them, maybe it's a little bit difficult. Skills shortage is quite a problem today as well. Growing user demand drives ever-increased concurrency, challenges leading to negative customer experiences. Customer is king, okay? They always say the customer is right. The thing is that with all of these challenging requirements that we have, we've got to try and meet these needs. And it's going to be quite a challenge, quite a problem for us. Okay, so I mentioned this concept of data-intensive applications. What do we really mean? Well, it can be some or all of these kind of 5 attributes according to SingleStore. Large volumes of data. In the old days, when I was doing my research on database performance benchmarking, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to travel out to CERN. They span the Swiss, the French border, and they do the particle physics, the atom smashing, Higgs boson, all of that kind of thing. They were planning for that years and years ago. And each of their experiments generates of the order of something like 40 petabytes of data. I mean, these numbers are mind-boggling at that time. But the thing is, if you look at the kind of requirements that we have to do with today, hundreds of terabytes, petabytes of data, it's the norm. It's the, in terms of the volume. Speed of ingestion, we need to get data in fast to be able to analyze it quickly. That is a real challenge as well. How do we achieve that? Latency, we need sub-second response times. Again, it's no use waiting for hours and days in order to be able to make decisions. You need to be able to look at milliseconds and seconds to look at those opportunities, look at those threats. Complexity as well, data is not simple. There's a lot of complexity. Sometimes there are specific products designed to meet those needs, but they are very niche, okay? You want a general purpose database engine that can help you there. And again, in terms of concurrency, lots and lots of users, and that can be, again, quite a challenge. And here are just some of the examples of some of the customers that we have that are using SingleStore. And if you look at the range, it spans all of the different sort of verticals there as well. Everything from Uber all the way to Akamai here as well. And you can see in terms of the kind of requirements that they have, its volumes, its response time, its number of events that they are dealing with, again, quite considerable. And sometimes these are very, very important events. So here, for example, with Thorn, identifying traffic children through real-time analytics and image recognition. There, you are looking at seconds. That may be the difference between saving a child's life, okay? So these are real people that we are dealing with, in real situations and real scenarios. In addition to this, then, of course, there's lots of other things that we have to think about. What about the streaming data ingestion, okay? Streaming is the norm these days again. We're no longer dealing with just static data anymore. There are things like sensors, wearables, these are sending in data. Heart rate monitors, okay? So in medical you can take historical data about a patient, for example, and then combine them with the real-time data that you're receiving. You can get a full picture of that particular patient. Do you need to make an intervention, okay? Because based upon their medical history, plus the data that you're streaming in at this point in time. You need analytics on this streaming data as well to get the useful insights. Some years ago, I think it was Harvard Business Review published an article that said that something like 99.5% of the data that organizations have, they never analyze. Only 0.5% of the data ever gets analyzed. That's mind-boggling. Imagine the potential to be able to mine the data that you have to get the insights that you want. We need that as well. Full text search, that can be very useful too, not just being able to issue kind of relational type queries or non-SQL type queries, but being able to use this full text search. And what about document style processing? Quite popular these days in terms of JSON documents, for example. We deal with a lot of that for this kind of unstructured and semi-structured data. Time series, financial markets, very, very important. And what about geospatial analysis as well? That can be very useful in terms of figuring out looking for patterns, looking for matches, looking for overlap between objects upon maps. Lots of requirements there. And so conventional wisdom is that, well, okay, we've got this wide range of requirements and needs, but you know, looking at those, typically we might think to ourselves, okay, we will probably pick a particular database product to deal with each of those. So, for example, in the case of document processing, maybe we're working with JSON documents, perhaps we think that perhaps a JSON NoSQL product might be a good thing, or if we want full text search, I mean, there are lots of these products out there on the market, open source and commercial, that might be a good fit there, and that might be a reasonable way to think about how to deal with these kind of problems. The difficulty is, and I'm sure you've come across it yourselves, too many databases. You end up with database sprawl, and that is the problem. I'm sure you've heard of this notion of polyglot persistence, okay, coined by Martin Fowler. I guess my one claim to fame is that I knew Martin before he became famous, okay? So Martin is the guy behind UML Distilled, patterns, lots of great stuff that he's written over the years. Look at his website and you'll see an article that he wrote in 2011 proposing just this kind of approach, that you pick specific products to deal with specific problems. So, you might have product A for user sessions, for example, product B, shopping cart, product C, product catalog, and so on, right? On paper, sounds like a good idea. The reality is that, unfortunately, what it means is that multiple learning curves. Your developers, your DevOps guys have got to learn all of these different products, how to use them. Multiple points of failure, okay? You've got to deal with the situation that each of these products has to be handled differently. Increased business cost as well, because no longer are you working with one product anymore, but a whole range of them, and therefore you have to think about how to deploy them in terms of education, in terms of management, in terms of, you know, if you're going to go for a cloud-based environment, for example, different ways that you can deploy these systems. Lots of things that come to the fore. You know, these complexities really start to make a difference. And it's not just myself. So, this gentleman here, Stephen Pimentel, I think he works for Apple these days, but previously he commented on exactly this kind of scenario and says, look, you know, it's not hard to imagine DevOps guys, you know, quitting in droves from any organization that adopts this approach of going down the polyglot persistence route, you know, because it's tough. These poor guys have to learn everything. They've got to learn multiple products, multiple, you know, backup strategies, storage technologies. There's lots and lots of degrees of freedom that you have to think about. It's tough. And then here again, a wonderful quote from Dave McCrory says, if you decide to go down this route, imagine that you're using just 6 of these different products. You're going to need a staff of 18 people just to manage the storage side. 6 storage technologies perhaps, okay? It's not scalable and it's expensive, okay? So he used to be CTO of Basho, one of the NoSQL vendors that unfortunately is no longer with us, although their technology is still around in a different form. So there are issues there again. So these people have kind of highlighted some of these concerns. All right then, so what's the solution? Well, naturally we propose SingleStore. Single database, data-intensive application. Single database because it can manage many of these requirements that we've stipulated, and it deals with this issue of data intensity as well. Here is the kind of high-level architectural view which kind of captures in a single slide what the product is really about. So everything from analytics to the type of applications, we touched on briefly some of these areas. Relational, obviously, that is the core of the technology, but it's multi-model. It can deal with geospatial. It can do JSON, key value, for example, time series, full text, okay? A single product can manage all of these requirements. On the ingest side, which we also talked about a little bit earlier on, it's got some integrations with big data technologies. I mean, some of these vendors are out there, Confluent, for example, Databricks. So there is a Spark connector, for example, much faster than using JDBC. And there is this capability to be able to ingest data in parallel from these external sources, whether it's an S3 bucket or it's Hadoop, HDFS, for example, or it's Kafka. You can do that directly. I'll show you that a little bit later. Lots of options in terms of how to deploy it. Perhaps many of you are thinking about this, the managed database as a service. That's a good choice. Great way to get started. But equally, you might have the requirement for doing your own cloud, for example, or on-prem. Those are options available too as well. So lots of choice, flexibility in terms of how to use the technology. What is the unique proposition then that SingleStore makes? Well, universal storage, single table type to deal with different types of requirements, whether it's transactional or it's analytical, okay? So you know that these two different requirements tend to have different characteristics. Point in time recovery, the great for system of record type applications. Many companies want to go down that route. Fast in terms of performance. Fast ingest as well. Again, we'll touch upon that in a few moments. And this, I think, very interesting kind of unlimited storage. So separating storage from compute. Already you see this being offered by some of these database warehouse vendors. It's been around for a little while, but now SingleStore is offering this in this HTAP sort of space, and it's the first vendor to do so. Multi-model, very important. You know, it's not just about relational technology anymore. We need the ability to deal with all of these new types of data and to be able to deal with them effectively. Run anywhere, we talked about that. And it's built upon ANSI SQL, okay? So regardless of what, new technologies have come along over the years, the one thing that has been consistent is relational. It's been with us for a long time. It's mature, it's well understood. Great skills available out there on the market. You will have no trouble finding appropriate DBAs or people with great, sort of SQL skills. The other thing is that because it's compatible with MySQL and MariaDB as well in terms of drivers, in terms of tools and so on, again, that makes life very easy in terms of adopting and using this technology from the get-go. So here's a little bit in terms of the convergence of transactions and analytics. So the operational databases, you see very familiar names on that side. And in terms of the analytical workloads, the data warehouse type systems on this side. So SingleStore can deal with both of these through a single table type. Okay, so how to get started? Bam. Build, augment, modernize, okay? If you are fortunate enough to be in this sort of particular side here where you start with greenfield developments, well done. You know, over the years, I can honestly say that I've not come across too many of those. They happen from time to time. It's great if you get that opportunity because you start from scratch. You've got no baggage with you, okay? You can choose the appropriate tools and technologies up front. Typically, though, a lot of organizations tend to sit in this category and this category. So you can use SingleStore to augment what you already have, as an accelerator, if you like. Or you can use it as a way to modernize your existing systems as well. This is fairly typical as well. So, just going back to my experiences in my very first IT job when I worked here in London, one of the systems that I worked on, I mean, it's ancient technology, used to run on PDP-11, so even, the time I joined them, it was old. And I had to learn this and had to learn macro assembler and RTL2, which is a real-time programming language developed by ICI, I think it was. And the thing is that it was fine-tuned for what it was required to do. It was very good at what it was required to do. It didn't need to be replaced. But over time, systems started to creak and it started to fall. And so what they did was the vendor, they developed modern technology to be able to support that, run side by side with it. Eventually, it was kind of replaced. But that can be one way to, utilize this technology as well. Okay, you don't have to go down the route of ripping everything out. That doesn't make sense. Business systems tend to have a long life shelf, a long lifetime. Okay, they are around for a very long time. And over time, of course, as requirements change, as needs change, you want to be able to get more from them. And sometimes that's not easy, okay? To rip something out is expensive and costly and so on. It's in a variety of different ways. All right, so very briefly then, I mentioned that there are good integrations with existing big data technologies. I mean, this is a big data conference, so where is a Spark connector? Okay, if you take the opportunity just to search on my name and look on medium.com, just recently I've published a couple of articles. Okay, so one shows how the Spark connector can be used with SingleStore managed service. Okay, in the cloud, literally you've got a couple of minutes that you need to sign up for the service and a couple of minutes to configure and set up the Spark connector, and it's much, much faster than using JDBC. Okay, it's a great way to use Spark as a kind of an ETL engine, if you like, to be able to get data into SingleStore. That works really effectively. And the other thing is that, of course, Spark is great, comes with mlib, many features and capabilities allow you to do machine learning. Again, the example that I wrote up recently shows you how you can use, in one particular scenario, for doing like fraud analysis, fraud detection, okay? There's many more applications that we can think of, and more to come in time. For ingest, rapid ingest, which we talked about right at the start of the presentation, remember that was one of the requirements, that we need to get data in fast. There is this concept of pipelines. Very, very useful. It's built into the technology. It's not something that you have to configure or add on. It's part of the core engine. And what it allows you to do, for example, is to be able to take a source, could be Kafka, could be S3, could be HDFS, for example, connect to that and ingest the data in parallel into your database management system at speed, okay? And it's like a few lines of code that you have to write. I've got that on the next slide, and I can show you that. And whilst you are doing that ingest process, you can apply some transformations, for example. And you can do insert into tables, and even you can write back to Kafka if you like, okay? It depends on your requirements. But essentially, this is a great way to be able to do this. And because this is a cluster-based environment, it's distributed. That distribution applies to the ingest as well. It's done in parallel for you, okay? Great way to get huge quantities of data into SingleStore. And this is actually one example. That's a real customer example. 10 million upserts, okay? Inserts or updates using SingleStore with this pipelines from Apache Kafka. Here's just, like you can see, some SQL type code here to define this. This is just a template, okay? Not the actual code used for that, but it shows you a few lines of code. That's all it's required on the SingleStore side. Not something that, again, you have to configure or add on. It's part of the core product. And then you just start the pipeline, and it will ingest the data for you. Again, search on my name, look on medium.com. Just wrote an article recently, 3-part series, showing how to do this with Kafka from the Confluent Cloud, for example. Any other Kafka source will be fine too. Just need to configure and change these settings. Hostname, for example, and your credentials, but that will work as easily as this does. Some of the examples then of literally SingleStore. You know, what some organizations have done to replace existing infrastructure, existing products and technologies with this product. And here we've got a tier 1 bank, 14 different data stores. This is Fathom Analytics. Okay, so they've replaced MySQL and Redis. I mean, Redis is awesome as a caching technology, but again, what they found is that using SingleStore to replace that was just streets ahead. Few other things as well. You can see some combinations of other technologies as well. Some of these, things like Elastic, for example, and Hive, SQL Server. More case studies available on the website as well if you're interested. Okay, great, and thank you. And so just 2 more slides. If you want to get started, please just go to singlestore.com, literally on the page, on the top right, free trial, sign up, $500 will get you going, okay? And that's a great way to start. Lots of free training, self-paced training available as well. And if you want to know more, please come along and visit us at stand 317. Great, thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much. So, I guess the obvious question then is, £500, what do we get for our money?
Right, well, $500.
$500, okay, but the exchange rate's not that great.
All right, yeah, I think the exchange rate, unfortunately, great question, thank you very much for that, whoever asked that. And so, I think the thing is that the way that the managed service is configured, literally you sign up, there's no credit card required, okay? So you don't have to pay or have any kind of prepayment up front. SingleStore gives you this $500 to start with, and it's great because you can create a cluster within minutes. You can suspend it, okay, to stop and hold it in place. The thing is, if you can just spend some time, perhaps taking an existing application that you have, maybe that you're working out with MySQL and it's maxed out, and you want to be able to shift to a platform like SingleStore, this would be a great opportunity to try to test that out, try that out. Schema migration should be very straightforward, no problems there. Like I said before, it's compatible with MySQL, MariaDB, all the tools, technologies, the skill sets that you have there, and that will be a great way to start. So although it doesn't sound like a lot of money, what I'm kind of reminded of is that when I first came to this country a very long time ago, my parents could have bought a house for 5,000 UK pounds, GB pounds.
Wow.
Right? In those days, $500 could have bought you a lot. Even today, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but actually you can do quite a lot. You can take the opportunity just to improve your skills, learn about the product, take the self-paced training. They've got a TPCH benchmark in there as well, which is the kind of the industry standard. You can test this out and push the product to its limits if you like. And so, although, maybe not a lot, but it's a great way to start, okay? And you can achieve a lot. Test it out, try it out, and I think you'll like what you see.
Thank you. So we've got no more questions on Slido. Anyone in the room got a question? They're all looking at me with a big no, nothing. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Really
all right,
appreciate
guys, well, have
that,
a great
Alma.
conference. Come and see us, okay, and talk with us, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks very much.